Hello and welcome. You're watching Be the People. I'm Rishika Barua. Custody battles in India and abroad largely remain about the divorce, about the mother versus the father seeking the custody of their child or children. But what about the children? Divorce and custody battles often murky, with children caught in the middle of a legal, often a psychological battle between the two parents. Do we really have an institutional mechanism? Do we have any support system for children? A safe space where they can perhaps just speak their mind without fear or favor? The short answer to that question, unfortunately, is no. Today on We the People, we talk about the custody battles in India, but we talk to stakeholders. We'll be joined by mothers, fathers, children who are either undergoing legal battles or have been through several of these in the past. What really happens in these cases? What is the kind of protection mechanism for children who are caught in the middle? All of that is what we're going to talk about in We the People today, something that's seldom really spoken of. Before I introduce the stakeholders into the conversation, let's just talk to our viewers about what the law says. So personal laws on custody are different from the Guardian and Ward Act of 1890. Courts are the final arbitrators on the matter. The best interest of the child is what is made priority by a court of law. Legal custody is different from physical custody. Legal custody entitles parent to take decisions in the child's life. Legal custody doesn't necessarily always mean that the child physically actually lives with the parent. The opinion of a child who is over 9 years of age will be considered in a court of law, but a non-custodial parent can get visitation rights, access rights, etc. Interestingly, the Supreme Court has also said that unwed mothers don't necessarily have to take any kind of consent from the biological father. In fact, they don't even have to inform or reveal the identity of the child to the biological father. This, of course, is in the case of unwed mothers. Further, personal laws in India are different. So, Hindu law on custody says that children below the age of 5, by virtue of being under 5, go directly to the mother. Children above the age of 9 may be asked their preference by court. The Muslim law says that the custody of children below the age of 7 by default goes to the mother, and after 7, the father, interestingly, becomes the natural guardian. The Christian law says that parents must prove to be capable of providing welfare. The court may choose to deny custody to both parents. Custody laws abroad, comparatively, if you look at the US or you look at Canada or you look at UK, say equal parental rights should be given to children upon the separation of their parents. It's a 50-50 joint custody that is ideally the case over a child's life, unless, of course, the court of law in these cases decides otherwise. So, like I said, the focus today is on what happens to children. What about their welfare? What about their psychological welfare? And most importantly, what is the institutional mechanism? What is the support system for these children in the case that their biological parents are fighting for their custody? We have with us in the studio Mr. Amod Kant. He's the founder general secretary of Prayas. He's also somebody who's been at the forefront of DCPCR, forming DCPCR. He's been at the helm of affairs as far as the police is concerned as well. Thank you very much. I appreciate you for being with us in the studio. We have Abha Singh, advocate and social activist, joining us. We have Malvika Rajkotia. She's an advocate with the Supreme Court. And we have Dr. Roma. She's a school counselor and also a psychologist with the Gangaram Hospital. Thank you very much, all of you, for being with us. I also want to introduce and personally thank members of the audience today. Many people in the audience today are actually stakeholders as far as this story is concerned. They are parents who are fighting custody battles, or their children who have actually been through it. So I want to begin by talking to the stakeholders. And, we have a woman with us in the audience. She doesn't want to be named. She doesn't want to reveal her identity. She comes from a village in Uttar Pradesh, and she has 2 children and she's been fighting a custody battle for the last 10 years. So let's hear from her first. मैं पहले आपसे पूछना चाहूँगी, आप हमारे साथ हैं, आप ऑडियंस में जुड़ी हैं, आप इस वक्त जो है आप डिवोर्स का केस लड़ रही हैं, आप अपने केस के बारे में कुछ बताइए।
हाँ, हम डिवोर्स को केस लड़ रही हैं।
और आपके 2 बच्चे?
हाँ, 2 बच्चे हैं।
और क्या दिक्कत है अभी आपके केस में, क्या हो रहा है, कुछ हमें बताएंगे?
अभी तो कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, खाली बस अभी तारीख है और बयान वगैरह ये सारी चीज़ें होती।
और आपके बच्चे?
बच्चे तो एक हॉस्टल में है और एक प्रयास में है इस टाइम।
आप कैसे मैनेज कर रहे हो? आर्थिक स्थिति क्या है आपकी? आप कैसे मैनेज कर रहे हो अपने बच्चों को अकेले बड़ा करना?
अभी तो प्रयास की मतलब सपोर्ट है, इस वजह से।
प्रयास एनजीओ है जो
हाँ,
आपको सपोर्ट कर रहा है।
हाँ।
और आपने अपने पति से मतलब वो बच्चों की कस्टडी मांग रहे हैं आपसे, या आपको आर्थिक मदद करने के लिए तैयार है? उसके बारे में कुछ बताइए।
नहीं, वो मदद करने को तैयार नहीं है, लेकिन हमने कोर्ट में मतलब खर्चा का केस डाला है गांव बदायूं में।
आप चाहते हैं कि वो
हाँ।
आपके बच्चों के लिए एटलीस्ट आर्थिक मदद करें आप?
हाँ।
वो क्या कह रहे हैं?
अभी तो कुछ नहीं कह रहे हैं, कुछ देना नहीं चाह रहे हैं।
और बच्चों के बारे में क्या कह रहे हैं?
उन्हें बच्चों से कुछ मतलब लेना है।
वो चाहते ही नहीं है, मतलब
नहीं,
कस्टडी नहीं चाहते बच्चों
नहीं।
की। और आप कैसे मैनेज करोगे? आपके 2 बच्चे हैं, एक लड़की एक लड़का, आप उनके लिए मतलब कैसे मैनेज करोगे? आगे आपने कुछ सोचा है, कुछ प्लान बनाया है?
कुछ नहीं, मैंने यही प्लान बनाया कि जब है जल प्रयास मुझे अब मदद कर रहा हो तो मैं नहीं नौकरी कर रहे हैं, पैसे जोड़ेंगे आगे और बच्चों को पढ़ाई कराएंगे।
So this is the flip side, in a certain sense, of the way custody battles often pan out. Ms. Ahmad Khan, do you want to just elaborate on this? I mean, she's associated with your NGO. You're essentially providing her with employment. You supported one of her kids to go to boarding school, and you're taking care of her family. But you know what often happens in such cases, because this is an odd case where the father doesn't want the custody. He's in fact denied custody, denied giving any money for support. How does this anecdotally play out on the ground? What happens to such children?
No, but then I think her story, when she talked about some kind of kharcha means that it is under 125 CRPC. Under section 125 CRPC, the woman can ask for some kind of compensation, or she can maintenance, which is called maintenance. Even the elders can get, anybody in the family can get, and the child must get it. So she is fighting this battle in Badaun. So let us not think that her husband is nowhere in the picture.
Of course, he's in the picture, but he's denying the children the maintenance and etc. Yeah.
He is not taking the responsibility of the children. He is being very clever actually. He is not taking responsibility of the children. He has left this woman to herself. She is left in total lurch along with 2 children. If an organization like Prayas doesn't help her, imagine her plight. Now, but then he is not missing any opportunity to create problem. So that is the position.
So he's exonerating himself of any association. So this is
Correct,
something
correct.
that. And how long do cases typically just go on?
I think it can go on because see, my experience comes from 3 directions. Number one, that I must have dealt, I do not know how many thousands of cases while I'm in Delhi police or DG police of Arunachal Pradesh, Goa, all over. And I have seen that this is one of the biggest activities that police is supposed to do. I hope you are clear that Delhi police created the first ever crime against women cell in Delhi police.
No, but sir, once again, I just want to stop you there, because like I said, this is not a show where we're talking about what happens with the women. That's a whole different issue altogether. What is the institutional support for children?
No, that is
if you hadn't stepped in, if your organization hadn't stepped in to help her and her children, what would happen?
No, through this program, I would like to tell that there are 3 different types of people who are supposed to take care of children or take care of anybody who is in need, the woman inclusive, I would say. Now, there, the matter comes to police most of the time, and the police should intervene because they do only counseling and don't support, number one.
Okay.
Secondly, the matter goes to court because the court ultimately decides about the custody without actually knowing what's going wrong, what's happening where.
Okay.
So in the court, there should be intervention of voluntary organizations like Prayas who can present the case and inform the court what is happening.
Right.
And of course, society at large, as you understand very well, they are not being provided. Domestic Violence Act, that also comes in picture. And variety of laws concerning the marriage and divorce, they come in picture, as you have already...
But like I said, that again brings me back to the reason we're doing this show. What about the children? What is the legal protection that's given to children? Before I get legal experts into the conversation, I want to quickly go across. We have a gentleman joining us on the phone line. He's a father who's fighting a custody battle. He doesn't wish his identity to be revealed, so we will respect that. He's joining us on the phone line. So if you can hear me, can you tell us a little bit about what is your case and what is going on right now? You're fighting for the custody of 2 children, if I'm not wrong.
नहीं मैडम, मेरा कस्टडी तो बच्चों का मिला हुआ है. आई हैव 3 चिल्ड्रन.
ओके.
2 लड़की है, 1 लड़का है. सभी का कस्टडी मुझे दिया गया.
ओके.
म्यूचुअल कंसेंट से तलाक हुआ था. लेकिन प्रॉब्लम है क्या कि एक जो बच्ची है मेरी, सेकंड वाली, वो जहां हम रहते हैं वहां अच्छे स्कूल में हम उसको पढ़ा रहे थे. लेकिन मदर साइड पे डिस्टर्बेंस हो रहा था. शी हैड विजिटिंग राइट वंस इन ए मंथ बस. लेकिन वो फोन से डिस्टर्ब करती है बात करने पे. उसके बाद मैंने उसको शिफ्ट किया यहाँ से दूसरे बोर्डिंग स्कूल में बाहर में. और फिर जब भी आती है, मैं जहाँ रहता हूँ वहाँ आती है, तो वो डिस्टर्ब करती रहती है।
आप अपने कस्टडी बैटल के बारे में हमें कुछ बताएंगे, क्योंकि टिपिकली हमने जो देखा है या हमने जो बात करी है, ज्यादातर जो है मदर को प्रेफरेंशियल कस्टडी मिली जाती है, द फादर हैज टू पे मेंटेनेंस एंड गेट्स विजिटेशन राइट्स। आपको किस बेसिस पे कस्टडी मिली थी आपके तीनों बच्चों की?
जॉब
और कितना मुश्किल था, कितना मुश्किल था आपके लिए?
उसी के आधार पर
जी,
वो जज साहब ने देखा था कि मैं बच्चों का परवरिश, तीनों बच्चों का कस्टडी हम लेने के लिए तैयार थे। उनके एजुकेशन के प्रति हम कंसर्न थे, और जज साहब ने मुझे मेरा जॉब का प्रोफाइल देखा, बाकी बातें की क्या क्या है प्रॉपर्टी वगैरह, उसके बाद उन्होंने एक्सप्रेस वे तीनों बच्चे का कस्टडी मुझे सौंप दिया।
तो अभी क्या दिक्कत है?
एक बच्ची को वो पढ़ाई में डिस्टर्ब करती रहती है, जैसे आती है तो उसको फिर जाने नहीं देती है।
तो आप क्या अभी लड़ रहे हैं कि उनके विजिटेशन राइट्स कैंसिल किए जाएं, ये मुद्दा है?
नहीं, जैसे मैं पुलिस में जाता हूँ, थाना में जाता हूँ कि मेरे पास लीगल कस्टडी है बच्चे का, मेरे पास रहना है, मदर को विजिटिंग राइट है, लेकिन मदर के पास जाती है, उसके बाद वो होल्ड कर लेती है 1-1 महीना तक, उसका पढ़ाई प्रभावित होता है। वहाँ मुझे कोई सपोर्ट ही नहीं मिल पाता, मुझे समझ में नहीं आता कि मैं क्या करूँ, बच्चा को उतना समझ है नहीं। अब मुझे क्या करना चाहिए वैसे सिचुएशन, मुझे तो समझ में नहीं आता ही नहीं। डिफाइंड है, वेल डिफाइंड मेरा कस्टडी है कि तीनों बच्चा का देखभाल, लालन पालन, भरण पोषण का जिम्मेदारी मेरा है।
ये तो हमने, ये ठीक है, थैंक यू वेरी मच। आप हमारे साथ जुड़े, आपने अपनी बात रखी। दैट्स अ फादर हु हैज एक्चुअली गॉट कस्टडी ऑफ ऑल 3 children but is undergoing problems even after he's gotten that custody with the mother of the kids. I think it's important, like I said at the very outset, to also listen to the side of the story of children and what they go through. And I want to thank my colleague and journalist with NDTV, Nantara, who's joining us on the show as well. Nantara, thanks very much. Tell us anecdotally, you're someone who's actually been at the front and center of a custody battle. What is it like for children? What was it like for you? And what is the kind of institutional support that our law or our courts give to children like yourselves?
So, luckily I was 13 when my parents got divorced, and I was informally asked to choose which one I wanted to be with. And, I was very lucky that the custody battle wasn't very bitter, and I got to stay with my preferred parent. But I feel like it's very important to listen to what the child has to say, especially because, we were looking at some rulings when we were making the show, and in one case, the court said that there is a distinction between what's good for the child and what the child wants. But I think, of course, children below the age of 6 or 7, probably it would be hard to judge. But I think children at the very outset can understand, where the nurture comes from, where the care comes from, what parent they trust. So I think that's very important. And I think it's also very important that parents don't make the custody battle about themselves and their problems in an ego trip, because at the end of the day, there is a child involved. So I think, I was lucky to go through what I went through, and everything came out fine, but I've heard horror stories where it's become
so you were asked essentially to make a choice when you were 13, and your choice was honored.
An informal choice, not in the court of law, but an informal one. And luckily both my parents, my other parent was absolutely okay with that choice.
So your choice was honored.
So my choice.
But that isn't always the case. Let's get in both the legal voices on the show. Thanks, Nantara, for joining us. Malvika Rajkotia, if I can come to you first, as someone who's really at the front and center of a lot of these battles that you see on a daily basis. How much of this is actually about the children, and what really happens to these children in terms of, just providing them support? Are they just like caught in the crossfire, torn between both sides, trying to sort of, fight for this battle? What really plays out, and what are the institutional mechanisms that we have to support children who are going through custody battles?
Right. So, the issue is obviously very, very complex, and so it would be difficult to do justice in just on a television debate. But certain things I do want to say is, one is that welfare prevails over personal law. When you were going over the law, you said that there's separate personal law for children. That's incorrect. Notwithstanding whatever the personal law may be, it is welfare of the child which will prevail. And the question of maternal preference below the child of 5, that also intuitively is the default position, because consistently in our traditional stereotypical families, which continue to be till date, it is the mother who is the primary caregiver. She has birthed, she has nurtured. Even nowadays, if she has not birthed, it could be by surrogacy and so on. But notwithstanding, she is very clearly the primary caregiver.
Right.
So the important thing for the welfare is obviously continuance of caregiving, not to interrupt, not to have drastic interruptions in change of atmosphere. So abroad, for example, they've developed the concept of nesting, which means that the parent can leave the children in the house and the other parent steps in. But that's an expensive proposition, obviously, which means that the parent have to have another house to go to and so on. But this is what the reason why I'm citing it as an example is to say that it has been found to be, for the welfare of the child, continuance has been the most important thing. That's one part. The other part is, of course, the issue which the young journalist talked about, her, being unfortunate but yet fortunate in the sense that it resolved well with regard to custody. And she says that child preference should be taken into consideration. Yes, indeed, the voice of the child must be heard. But it also needs to be remembered that it is again clinically found that children tend to mirror the parent who has greater power or who they are scared of.
Sure.
So that is something that needs always to be taken into consideration. What is the element of tutoring? I've seen the most ghastly allegations being made by children against mostly the fathers with regard to sexual abuse. Now, that does not mean, and I say that again, please, with care, that sexual abuse does not happen.
Absolutely.
It happens more often than we would realize. So, but having said which, we come to the next level, which is indeed it is true that parents tend to make it about themselves.
Yes.
And then it becomes, therefore, assertion of power over the children.
Right.
But how do I round it up with just a minute more, which is that very often fathers tend to fight very hard for custody and will suddenly say, but I was so good and I used to bathe the child and I can cook a continental meal or some things they will say.
Right.
But very often they want access to the children. And I'm not saying that's true of all fathers. I mean, we know some magnificent fathers, and I hope there are more the better ones and so on. But the truth of it is that very often that battle needs to be viewed with skepticism.
Yes.
Because it is about reducing child support payments.
Right.
By saying that I will take custody.
Which is the case study that we actually began with. The lady who's here from Uttar Pradesh, it's exactly that.
Well,
The father
in
just
that,
completely
in that
denying.
case, the father, I mean, no, there the father just doesn't care. I mean,
Yes.
it's a question
No,
of abandonment.
and also completely,
So
also completely denying any kind of help and support in this particular case. But Abha Singh, again, I'll come back to you.
Sorry, please let me make that. They want custody to reduce payment to the wife.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with the child.
Okay. Yes, of course.
So
No,
they say, rather than pay for the
I
children
understood
to
your point.
you, I'll take custody.
But Abha Singh,
That's
I want
the
to ask you, before I bring Dr. Roma into the conversation, I want to ask you once again, institutionally, I mean, what is the kind of support system that we can build in order for there to be a safe space for children? Because it's very rare that children are, allowed to speak their mind. It's very rare, like Malvika Rajkotia put it, that there is an element of tutoring. So it's a very complex issue. But how do you ensure that institutionally there is some kind of a support mechanism for children who are going through this psychological warfare in the house?
See, I mean, if you talk of the DV Act, it talks of protection officers. So there is a provision of protection officers who are supposed to visit the homes, because when a woman comes forward and says that there is domestic violence in the house and my children are seeing that I'm being beaten up and the husband is violent, so that it is the duty of the protection officer to visit the house and give a report of that matter to the court. Then, of course, that you have the maintenance you have under 125 CRPC. And then above all, I think the biggest thing is NGOs like Prayas who are coming forward, because, as a lawyer, what I have seen, I've handled a lot of family court cases. Biggest issue is finance. These are housewives, these are illiterate women, or they don't have money, they don't know how to go about the case. So the biggest role is that, I think, of the NGOs that can come forward, because government doesn't have the time. Like you may say there is the State Child Rights Commission. or the National Commission for Child Rights. They
Yes.
will only take up matters which the media has highlighted. But I have not seen any child commission coming forward and helping a child in distress. It's in
Right.
fact the NGOs. So that is very important. The role of protection officer is very important. During COVID, so many women rang me up that we are facing domestic violence. Please come. The husbands are violent, beating up children.
Indu.
But it was difficult to even connect with the protection officers on the mobile because half the time the phones were switched off.
Right.
So the state mechanism and NGOs together. But I was
But you
listening
know,
to what you
Abba
were
Singh,
talking of.
I know what you said about NGOs, and in fact, we have somebody who's played the role of a protection officer with us in the audience, and I want to go to her. But their grudge, from what I understand, is that you can intervene in these cases, you can lend support, but what standing do you have in a court of law? आपकी इनके केस में, फॉर इंस्टेंस, या कोई भी केस में कोर्ट में आपका बयान कौन सुन रहा है?
नहीं, हमारे यहाँ पे करीब 2000 केसेस हम लोग डील कर रहे हैं पिछले कोई 5-6 साल में।
हाँ।
लेकिन सारे केसेस में हम उनको लीगल सपोर्ट देने की कोशिश करते हैं, उनकी काउंसलिंग होती है, विक्टिम जो भी सर्वाइवर्स हैं, लेकिन कोर्ट तक बात सिर्फ विक्टिम ही पहुंचा सकते हैं।
Exactly.
कोई एविडेंस के तौर पे हमारे जो सोशल वर्कर हैं या काउंसलर्स हैं, दे आर नॉट अलाउड इन द कोर्ट कि वो अपनी बात वहाँ पे कोर्ट में इनके पक्ष में रख सकें, बिकॉज वी नो द इंटायर स्टोरी। उनकी फैमिली,
आप हमें बताइए, क्योंकि आप इतने सारे केसेस के साथ डील करते हैं, आपकी बाकी की टीम भी यहाँ है, आप लोग बच्चों के बारे में क्या देख रहे हैं? बच्चों की इन केसेस में इन पर कुछ फोकस होता है, इनको कुछ मदद मिलती है, बच्चों से कोई बात करता है? क्योंकि ज़्यादातर फोकस, जैसे आप भी कह रहे थे, या तो औरत पे होता है क्योंकि वो डोमेस्टिक अब्यूज से सफ़र कर रहे हैं, आप उनको लीगल सपोर्ट दे रहे हो, उनको काउंसलिंग दे रहे हो, बच्चों का क्या होता है इन केसेस में?
सारे इंतजामात के बाद भी अगर फाइनेंशियल सपोर्ट दे रहे हैं, सारे तरीके के सपोर्ट, एजुकेशनल सपोर्ट दे रहे हैं, लेकिन फिर भी जो बच्चों का मेंटल एंड इमोशनल वेल बीइंग है वो बहुत हैम्पर करता है। वो जो पूरे पीरियड है, लाइक सी टोल्ड अबाउट द एज 13, 12 एंड these are the age, the very much like insensitive and very delicated. In this period must be there some kind of emotional and like a well-being and support and mental and other things. Other things is more important than the financial and other support. But this is completely break between the family and the child.
Right.
कई बार
But you know, that's the problem. Dr. Roma, do you want to come in here? I know that we've got multiple stakeholders and multiple voices on an issue, and I keep trying to draw the attention back and put the focus on children. What are you seeing anecdotally as someone who's dealing with children in school? I mean, apart from schools, and these are a certain section of schools which are actually putting the focus on child counseling and speaking to children, we don't have any mechanism of institutional support for children, do we? I mean, there is no, in a custody battle, apart from listening to the child's opinion in certain cases, as we've heard, there is really nobody who's talking to the child or putting the focus on child welfare.
I completely agree with you. And, we don't allow the child to actually express what's going on in their minds. And if we don't allow that, we're only pushing the child to only listen to the parent who's got the custody. And the child has to please that parent because the child is feeling unsafe, insecure, and the child is only looking for his or her well-being. Both the parents are not understanding. When the child goes to school, he or she is getting bullied. Everybody is asking, where is your other parent? There's a parent-teacher meeting going on and the child is asked, where is your other parent? So this child feels completely judged, is feeling sad, and also is unable to tell the parent who has the custody that I want to go and meet my other parent.
Okay.
And parents don't realize that the biological parent is always going to remain the biological parent. So why take away that parental support from the child?
So I want to understand solutions. And I have very little time on the show, so I'll very quickly come to each of our panelists, and I'll give you, I'm afraid, just 30 seconds. But what is the solution? How do we put the focus on children? How do we better prep our system to support
the child's best interest should be served, and it can be served through the existing mechanism. There are two bodies I can think of in the legal setup. Number one is Commission for Child Rights. I mean, there are state commissions and National Commission for Child Rights. They have the legal authority to intervene in all the cases, including this case. They can go into it.
Okay.
Number one. Secondly,
so they should lend some kind of support.
They should lend. I mean, the family, it is all dealt with by the family court.
Fine. So you
family
have counselors who can go and speak to
family
children.
Family court can take the assistance and the State Commissioner for Child Rights, and second, the Child Welfare Committee.
Okay.
The Child Welfare Committee has again the authority to look into the cases, to help the child, to prepare a situation for the well-being of child in the given situation.
Okay.
But there is a gap. The gap is that ultimate decision about the custody is taken by a court. a judge.
Understood. Understood. Abba Singh, what do you make of some of those suggestions? I mean, do you think this is practical? Do you think it's doable? What do you think needs to be done in order to put the focus on children and custody battles?
There has to be accountability. Most of these appointees of child committees and child commissions are political appointees who have no idea, no knowledge, or no way of handling with these children. So I think first you have to bring people who are focused and a timeline. If a child custody case is dragged for 10 years, the child doesn't even know where it has to go. And I would only say one line which Supreme Court said in Neel Ratan Kundu case, that custody is a human problem which must be solved with human touch. So I think they should not become mechanical. Half the courts think that it's a mechanical issue, husband-wife ka jhagda hai. No. It is a humane issue with a humane touch that needs to be handled.
I think that's
so the
very
perception
important.
has to change.
I think it's very important because you need to look beyond the profile, you need to look beyond the paper, and I think actually put the focus on what the child wants. Malvika Rajkotia, anecdotally, these are all things we've heard of. There are lots of suggestions that have been made, but practically, as someone who deals with these cases on a daily basis, how do you think we can actually help children in these situations better? How do you think we can do better?
I think we'll need a better structure where we need some highly skilled professionals to actually prepare a checklist of welfare. Otherwise, what is happening is that every judge looks to welfare from a personal perspective, which is a result of their socialization. So many of the judges will think, oh my God, this child is going to go to America. And so they equate opportunity with welfare. Whereas, as another panelist had said, there is much more than just opportunity at that point of time. Education. There is about emotional sustenance which gets ignored. So we need refined checklists which need to be analyzed separately and see where it leads you without a judge intuitively taking a position which could be emanating from a dislike of either parent. After all, we are human, we tend to be that. And what happens most is I find that the parents end up getting scolded by judges to say, oh my God, you're not thinking of the children.
Okay.
But the point is that they've come there because they can't do it, and the judge has to step in as a parent to the child, which very often they end up not doing.
Well, a lot has been said about what is a very complex issue, and I'm afraid there's so much more that we still need to talk about. But that's all the time we have on this edition of We the People. Thank you all very much, especially to our audience, for joining us on this edition. Good night and thanks for watching.